The CS2 market just crashed, and let me tell you why everybody is wrong about this update. There is a very important discussion to be had today about the state of the CS2 market, and I'll keep it blunt. This new CS2 crash is based completely in fear and delusion. There's no statistical evidence for why this update would make that much of a difference in the CS2 market. Valve Corporation is not the one that crashed this market. It is the masses who have not thought about the actual statistical repercussions of this update. The first thing I want to talk about is Valve Corporation, the loss of trust, and the loss of buyer confidence in Valve. I think it is all completely unsubstantiated. We'll get into the statistics in a minute, but even when the statistics are pointed out, people talk about how they cannot trust Valve anymore, and it's not about the actual statistics, it's about the principle of the actions they made, and I think it's just completely foolish. Valve Corporation is one of the biggest game companies on the PC market. They hold a monopoly in PC games. They own a massive share of the sales every year in PC games. In 2022, it was estimated they made over $13 billion in revenue, and we know that the CS2 market and the player count and key sales and the armory, all of that has shot up even more in the past years. They're probably making $30 billion a year. In 2023, they made $1 billion alone from CS2. There is zero correlation, between this update and Valve potentially just destroying the CS2 skins market. People saying that Valve will move all items over to the Steam community market, no items will be tradable, they're going to release Dragon Lores again, they're going to release old collection skins. All of this is wildly incomparable to this new update. The actual statistics behind this update are so unbelievably insignificant compared to what people are talking about. This tiny percentage move in supply of golds is not equivalent to Valve completely destroying their entire franchise. Valve is not about to give up $1 billion a year in revenue by destroying their entire franchise so that they can move things to the Steam community market. And even if they did move all trades to the Steam community market so they could get their 15% or whatever, 15% of zero is still zero. If the skins are worth nothing, they don't get any Steam community market sales fees. Valve is highly incentivized to keep the market thriving and healthy. They knew that in the short term that people would react like this, that the market would take a massive dump. And do you know what else is crazy? People have talked about Valve insider trading, devs stocking up on tons and tons of reds before this update. Do you know what would complete the cycle of this insider trading? Is if everybody sold the reds back to everybody and then bought the golds that dipped 80% in price, even though they only increased in 5% in supply. In some cases, for specific knives, increasing only 1% in supply. This new update is only going to benefit the top 1% of people who own the mass supply of skins. This is only going to increase institutional ownership in the CS2 market. While the prices are free falling, that is when the whales are going to scoop up all these skins that average players are dumping on the market because they're scared. The people that are investing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars are most likely going to keep a level head while everybody else is panicking. And they're going to increase the percentage of the supply that they own massively with this update. People are talking about the seas of reds that are laying around in people's inventories. The people that own the mass amounts of these reds, the people who own hundreds and thousands of reds, they are not the type of people that are spamming trade-ups right now. They are selling those reds that are hyperinflated back to you at a 1,000% gain, and then they are using that money to buy up all the knives and gloves and high tier skins that people are dumping on the market, to buy up these skins that aren't, that the fundamentals didn't change. The fundamentals of these high tier skins didn't change. The supply of golds is only moving 5 to 15%. Valve has already shown us that they're trying to move away from cases, get rid of cases. They took the fracture case out of the active drop pool and replaced it with this weird Genesis terminal that doesn't even have golds in it. There's theories that eventually all cases are going to be moved out of the active drop pool and we're only going to have Genesis terminals. There had to be a tweak to the way golds were operating at some point. So to put it in basic terms, the only people that are selling right now at an 80% loss, 70% loss, are the people that don't believe in Valve Corporation and the people that think that CS2 investing is completely dead, that they're cashing out before all their skins go to zero, that Valve has just killed the market, all of that. If you think that the CS2 market is dead because of a slight tweak to how golds work, moving the supply up a couple percent, that is your own prerogative. The fundamentals of skins themselves have not changed, and Valve isn't going to release old cases, old collections, and they're not going to make skins untradeable. Every real CS2 investor has always known that when they're investing into CS2 skins, they're investing into Valve's intellectual property. Valve owns every single CS2 skin. You can get your account banned with a moment's notice. They can take everything away from you. It is a highly risky market to begin with. Everybody who's been in the market for years knows this. They know that Valve can do whatever they want with the skins market. They know that it's Valve's intellectual property, that they can manipulate it however they want. It is in their best interest to keep the market alive and healthy. When they are making updates like this, they know the short-term ramifications. Back in the day, when they made the 7-day trade hold, they knew the market was going to drop. They knew that the market was going to crash. All of that. When they started banning OP skin spots, they knew the market was going to crash. They don't have people's short-term interest in mind. They have the long-term interest of their company, their franchise, their billion-dollar product. Who knows how much CS2 is actually worth? If it makes $1 billion a year in revenue, CS2 itself could be worth $20 billion. Why would they kill a $1 billion a year industry? For no reason. They wouldn't do it. So now that we've talked about buyer sentiment, let's move on to some actual statistics. I'll look at many examples, but let's start off with an older example, talking about the 387 case hardened Karambit that people were talking about, the $1.5 million Karambit. People are saying, oh, this guy's screwed, whatever. We're going to use CSGO Float, the database, for our supply estimates. People are saying that you can't use CSGO Float because that's not all the skins in existence. CSGO Float has been around for a decade. A majority of skins are on CSGO Float. It's a very good idea of how many are in existence. Even the ones on CSGO Float, a lot are on banned accounts or dormant accounts. People say that there's thousands and thousands more skins on other accounts that aren't registered on Float. That is true, but a lot of a lot of those accounts are going to be inactive. We're not going to have mass players returning with an army of R8 fades to flood the market. It's just not logical. So 106,000 R8 fades in existence. If you take the 106,000 supply on CSGO Float and you divide that by 5, you only create 21,000 new knives. If you divide that by the 60 different options you have in the case, you are only creating 353 new knives per knife in the case if you were to delete the entire population of the R8 revolver fade. And then if you add in the actual chance to get a Karambit blue gem, you divide that by 1,000, it's not even guaranteed that you would get a new factory new 387 Karambit if you traded up every single R8 revolver in existence. If we look at how many were actually selling during the update, 95, 135, like 1,000 for the entire day. Like basically 1,000 revolvers for the entire day were sold. Divide that by 5 and then divide that by 60. So there's like a handful of new knives created in the past week from the R8 revolver fade. If we look at a much more popular item, something in the active duty collection, the AK Nightwish has one of the highest supplies of any covert in the game. There's 675,000 of these registered on float.db. If you add up all the sales from the very first 24 hours, you would have 29,819 Nightwishes sold in the first 24 hours of this update. If you were to assume that every single one of these AK Nightwishes was traded up, which is highly, highly unlikely, you would only create 198 of each new knife in this case. Sorry, I had the well-worn one pulled up over there. This is the field-tested chart, and this is the numbers that I have for field-tested. 29,819 were sold in the first 24 hours. In the first 24 hours, one of the highest volume reds in the game, the AK Nightwish, only produced, at a maximum, if every single one of these were traded up, 6,000 new golds. That is absolutely minuscule compared to the overall supply of golds. And after the first 24 hours, the sales fall off even harder. 187, 192, 186, a negligible amount are being sold and traded up, especially compared to the first hype of the first 24 hours. 1,600, 1,700 sold. So in that first 24 hours, only 200 new knives of each knife from this case are going to exist. And then if you look at the rare finishes like an emerald, forget about it. It's like a handful of new knives that exist. And then there's other exterior wares. Let's look at how many were sold for factory new. Yeah, 2, 8, 6. Well worn is a little bit more comparable, but still a fraction of the amount. Probably half. Yeah, about half of the amount sold. So from well worn ones, if you traded up the entire supply that was sold in the last 24 hours, you would only make 100 new golds per gold in the case. The last example that the second to last example that we're gonna look at is the SSG Dragonfire and the glove case, and this is my favorite example out of this whole experiment. 253,000 in existence. 253,000 divided by 5 divided by the 24 options in the case. If you traded up every single SSG Dragonfire registered on float.db, you would only create 2,100 of each new glove. Isn't that insane? There's, I think, 7 to 8,000, 7 to 10,000 supply of each glove in the glove case. Specifically, the spearmint is around 7,500, I believe. To increase the supply by 2,100 at an absolute maximum is not that big of a change. There are 7,557 Pandora's Box gloves in existence. Let's say absolutely conservatively that 10% of the entire population of Dragonfires is deleted. You'd only increase the supply by 210 pairs of Pandora's Box gloves. 210 divided by 7,550. You're increasing the supply of Pandora's Box gloves by 2%. 2%! Does a 2% increase in the supply of Pandora's Box gloves warrant a 70% decline in price? I think absolutely not. And that is the reason why I'm buying these high tier golds at the very moment. I bought a pair of spearmint gloves for $1,300 $1,300. It's absolutely ridiculous. And then, of course, since we're making our investment decisions on statistics and not feelings, we're going to look at how many were actually created in the past 24 hours, or the first 24 hours of the update. The SSG Dragonfire and field tested the highest volume skin, or wear of this skin, sold 8,227 units. 8,227 units in the first 24 hours. That is 1,645 new golds, if every single one was traded up. Only 68 new pairs of gloves from the glove case were unboxed, potentially, in the past 24 hours. 68. In the first 24 hours, if you traded up every single SSG Dragonfire that was sold on the Steam community market, the supply of Pandora's box gloves would have rose 0.00900%. I hope everybody is grasping how completely ridiculous this entire market crash is. The entire crash is based off of delusion and fear. There is no statistical backing to why everybody is quick selling all their items at an 80% loss. The supply is only increasing fractions of a percent for some of the best cases, and at some of the worst cases, only a couple percent, 2%, 3%. And the actual potential, if you traded up the majority of everything in existence, isn't even close to double. And again, that was in the first 24 hours where there was a massive hype to buy SSG Dragonfires. In the next 24 hours, the amount sold dropped from 200 to 400 down to 80, 40, 50. And then as prices rise, guess who's selling these items? People that have thousands of Dragonfires in their inventory are the ones selling these back to the average player for these massively inflated prices. It's not the whales doing the trade-ups. It's the average person that wants to get a cool new gold and is excited about getting cheap new gloves. Those are the people that are buying these skins at 1,000%. Before this whole thing gets me too heated, let's get to the last example. People talk about, or when I bring up all these statistics about how many reds are in existence and how many golds can be created out of all these reds, the next thing that people want to say is, oh, well, there's blues and purples and pinks, and there's millions of skins in existence, and that means that golds are going to go down to 0. Again, for the glove case, 425,000 pinks in existence. Very easy math that takes 2 seconds. 425,000 pinks divided by 10 to get the reds. That makes 42,500 reds. Divide that by 5. 8,500 new golds. Divide that by 24. If you traded up every single Wasteland Princess in existence, you would only create 350 of each glove in the case. The statistics aren't there. The millions of knives that people think are flooding the market don't exist. It's all a fantasy. This entire market crash is completely driven by emotion. Another thing I want to talk about. Since the prices of cases and all skins have dropped, people are talking about how people are not going to unbox cases ever again. Look at what's happening with case unboxings right now. They are going through the roof. Last time I checked, the gallery case was at 1 million unboxed, 1.2 I think in my last video. It jumped up to 1.5 million unboxed. If you look at, let's say, the Prisma 2, before this was under 500,000 unboxed for the last month. It is now at 1.1 million unboxed. The amount being unboxed is spiking right now. And we can go through countless examples of all of these skins, but all of them have very similar, or exactly similar numbers to the examples I went over. I went over a high volume example with the Nightwish, and a low volume example with the R8 Fade, and a middle tier volume example with the SSG Dragonfire, and everything else is going to look very, very similar. There simply aren't enough reds and pinks in the game, in existence, to make a dent in the supply of golds. So what does this mean long term? This means that people who are liquidating their items right now, I think, are making a massive mistake. Right now is the time to buy. Be greedy when others are fearful, and be fearful when others are greedy. That shit that Warren Buffett said. You know, when a price drop like this is completely unsubstantiated by statistics and only by emotion and fear, the only logical thing to do is to invest, which is exactly what I've done. So this is my new combo that I bought. I bought this Nomad Ruby for $1,300. A couple days ago, this was around $5,000. And the supply of rubies and sapphires and black pearls is even more hilarious when you delve into the actual statistics of it, because these rubies are literally going to increase in supply by like 10 or 20 knives. The supply literally isn't going to move up in any noticeable difference at all. Like a fraction of a percent that these are going to move up. And people are quick selling them at 70% off, 80% off. So I find that hilarious. And then again, as we looked with the glove case golds, I bought a pair of field tested spearmints. Oh, that's my knife that I was looking at. I was like, oh, factory new. Field tested spearmints, I bought those for $1,300. A week ago they were selling for over $5,000. And the supply of these is only going to rise a fraction of a percent. So for me, it is only logical for me to double down on the CS2 market. I'm mass buying right now. I'm using, multiple accounts to buy as many skins as I possibly can. I'm not selling a single thing. You only profit when you sell, and you only lose when you sell. If you look at the overarching picture for what potentially could be in the future for CS2, if they really are getting rid of all cases that have golds in them, they are already getting rid of cases. Rare cases are going extinct as we speak. The supply is going down, 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 faster and faster and faster. Eventually, there's going to be a finite amount of golds, reds, pinks, pinks and reds that trade up to golds. All of this is going to be a finite, fixed amount if there's no more cases that are going to be released that have golds in them. Again, with this price drop, I think that institutional ownership is only going to rise. The top 1% of owners in the CS2 market are only going to scoop up more and more and more, and the average player is going to have even less ownership in the CS2 market. And eventually, a year, 2 years down the line, people are going to be coming back and paying even higher inflated prices because people have fed into the reverse dump. People are undercutting each other, and it's playing perfectly into the plan of someone who has millions of dollars to unload onto the CS2 market. If I had $1 million right now, I'd put it on the CS2 market. It's it's crazy. So I guess to come to some sort of a conclusion with this video, I say now is the time to buy. I think this is the only opportunity in a lifetime that you'll get to invest into the CS2 market like this. Investing into items at 2020, 2021 prices in 2025 with literally no change in the fundamentals of how skins work, I think it's a golden opportunity. And about the trust, I personally do trust that the multi-billion-dollar company knows not to, nuke their own market, their own multi-billion-dollar product. They're pretty smart over there. They got their thinking caps on at Valve. They knew the statistical implications of this update, and they know everything. They know what's happening. They predicted it before it happened. Trust in Valve. Trust in the one of the number one game companies on computer on PC, the company that has a monopoly on computer games. Uh, it's like investing into Apple almost. They're obviously a lot smaller than something like Microsoft, but for game companies, it's one of the biggest out there. Um, if you don't believe in Valve anymore and you think that they're going to release Dragon Lores in the Armory because they tweaked the way goals drop by like 2%, that's on you. Eventually, all these prices will bounce back, and prices are already bouncing back. As you can see, with the Pandora's box gloves, the lowest listed right now, sitting at 5,500, selling for a low of 38, and I bet I'll be able to find some lower in here. 35, 34, 32, 33, 31. So basically, all the scrubs that quick sold are, out of the game now, and people that realize that this is actually, not really changing all that much the fundamentals of the Pandora's box gloves, they're not willing to sell. So now the price is already bouncing back. 23 sold at an average of 3,800, and then we're getting 10 sold at an average of almost 5K. So things like these high tier items are already starting to move back up in price, and people are talking about when the 7-day trade hold, lifts and all of these skins dump on the market. And as we've talked about, the actuality of how many skins are going to be dumped on the market is minuscule. 68 gloves at an absolute maximum. 68 new Pandora's box gloves at an absolute maximum have been created in the past week. So, sorry, that's for one specific wear, but the other wares have a lot lower volume, so say around 100, maybe. Maximum. That's if all of them are traded up. Yeah, invest in the CS2 market. This crash is dumb. Goodbye, everybody.